Welcome to Comeza Podcasting Network, the podcasting platform of Comeza Global Online Channels, bringing you another episode by Comeza Radio Worldwide Podcast. The mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. Our shows are based on the principle called the idea. We inform and entertain. We develop and educate. We empower and support. We associate and network. That is the idea. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the episode. Yeah, this is the last session of the year for us here at the Comeza Radio Worldwide Podcast, and the last session of the series Coaching Models and Thoughts. I'm looking forward to this one. It is certainly a milestone for us. We are wrapping up, and we are wrapping up with a theme: performance coaching and feedback in the workplace. And our guest speaker is Coach Dolores Mashishi. She is joining us all the way from Switzerland. I hope the weather is treating her very well that side. We'll find out very soon. But let me remind you, our listeners, that this has been indeed a wonderful series wherein our associate coaches were sharing with us some insights into the various coaching models and methods. They had to research it, each of their various models, and extract what they view or perceive to be relevant to us as coaches on this Coaches Learning Forum. Let me remind you where it all started. We started on the 22nd of August 2022 with various coaches giving us some snippets of their research work, 10 minutes each. And that was followed by this current series that we are wrapping up with today. On the 6th of September, we had a theme, Star Coaching Model, presented to us by coaches Krista Hendricks and Ramavaka Chimule, followed by session 2 on the 13th of September on Change Coaching Model, and that was by Coach Tosi Mpandle. Then session 3 on the 22nd of September on Fuel Coaching Model, presented by Coach Rapula Mudivani and Coach Loazi Mutembu, and they were joined by Coach Ulrike Pretorius, addressing the topic communication in workplace coaching. Session 4 took place on the 27th of September, and that was on Achieve Coaching Model, presented by Coach Prof. Sesh Paruk, followed by session 5 on the 4th of October on Clear Coaching Model, that was presented by coaches Ananias Stumuchulwane and Sedi Mantoko. Session 6 was on the 11th of October on Oscar Coaching Model by Coach George Mutenda Zamera, followed by session 7 on the 11th of October on Oscar Coaching Model by Coach George Mtendazamera. Sorry, it was session 7 on the 8th of November by Coach Mishti Verma on appreciative coaching model. And then the last one before today was session 8 by Coach Patricia Akinlawton, and it was on Grow Coaching Model. So as I mentioned today, we wrap up the series on the performance coaching and feedback in the workplace. Greetings to you, Coach Dolores. How are we doing and how is everything in Switzerland?
Good evening and good afternoon for some of us, Coach Sam. And it is cold. It is cold. We're entering into our winter season. Let me first say good evening as well to all my fellow colleagues and all the people that joined on the podcast. But yes, it is winter. It is winter, so we are gearing ourselves for a very strong winter for this year, particularly.
Yes, with all the problems associated with shortage of gas,
Energy. Yeah,
it should be quite challenging for the Europeans,
yeah, yeah.
and it is quite interesting that most people will come to the south in the European winter months, but you decided to go the opposite direction.
Yeah, I suppose it's the strength of the reasons that pushes people to go wherever they go, right? Isn't that true, Sam?
Oh yes, oh yes. The reason sometimes is compelling, and it's an experience sometimes to go the opposite direction. The opposite direction doesn't mean it's a wrong direction. It's just a choice.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
True.
yeah,
It's true.
yeah. Perhaps like as always, let's start with you introducing yourself to the listeners and also your own organization and perhaps how you came to become a coach.
Okay. All right. Um, Thanks, Sam. As it said, my name is Dolores Mashishi, and I'm a proudly South African. I was born in Rustenburg in the mining area, around the mining area there. I am a mother of 3 adult boys, all of them in going to university in South Africa. One at the UCT, one in Durban, and the younger one actually just finishing matric. And my partner lives in Switzerland, and really that's my reason for being here a couple of times in a month. But I do go back home in a month as well. So I spend my time living between Johannesburg, where I live in the Fourways area, and here.
Mm,
I've spent more than 30 years of my life really in the business of people as an HR manager, and then just graduating then to the HR executive positions in different financial sector industry, different banks. I suppose if I looked back, I've actually worked for all the banks. There isn't a bank I haven't worked for, except Nedbank, but all the other banks I've worked for. I've worked for a number of private equity houses, small private equity houses. So a lot of my experience is really born in the finance sector. And lastly, I worked for an ICT company, which is Altron. That was my last really corporate job that I held up until the end of 2020.
mm. And you say that it's always been in people issues, but what in particular have you picked up from the financial services sector when it comes to the business of people?
Um, I suppose what has evolved in the business of people is around where organizations and businesses focus. So particularly in the finance sector, there would always be a focus on driving targets, driving risk, driving where the money should be made, how the money should be made, and not necessarily a focus on who actually makes this money. So the actual people element of looking at who are the people that we have, what kind of culture do we create for them to do what we would like them to do, what kind of environment do we create, those have organically come on and build. And I don't think the finance sector is really there yet, but there has been definitely a push in looking at, for any organization that evolves to be what it is, and that evolves to be a great organization, it is driven by the people. So really the people needs to be at the center of, whether it's the strategy, at the center of the conversation, both the employees and the customers. So those two things are really what makes the business what it is. And obviously, lately, as we know now, more into looking at broader societal factors, because these organizations evolve and are what they are because of not just the people, but also the society, the bigger society, communities that they live in. So that has been really the path of growth that I've seen with the business of people, and the focus in terms of where banks have really been, banks, insurance industries, and and investment banks, investment activities in banks. That's where you've actually seen quite a number of, just a shift from hardcore targets into looking at much more softer ways of how they achieve these targets, and really putting the people and the customer in the center of what they do.
Mm. Wow, sounds like you have had quite an amazing time in the banking sector and financial services sector broadly. And it's not surprising that you decided that coaching is going to be your focus. And perhaps it would be interesting for us to hear from you. How did you make this transition into coaching,
Mm.
and how did it come about?
Yeah. For as long as I remember, I've been one of those fortunate people that I've had for the past 10 years. I've had a mentor, and the last 5 years, a coach. So the mentor that I've had for 10 years, I still have that mentor now, and he still plays that role of mentorship in my life. And the coach that I have for the past 5 years, it's still my coach currently. So I've been fortunate, as I said, to be able to be exposed to how I am being facilitated into being the best person that I can be, and how coaching, and depending on whatever model, whatever methodology the coaches use, just the role of a coach, and being coached myself, just experiencing that transformation, for me has always been fascinating, to move from one place to the other and become so conscious of this transformation that's happening. And where you actually, one realizes, especially myself, where I realize is that I actually have got the resources to be, or to do what I would like to do. It just takes somebody to just ask the right questions, or just focus me to the right angle, that I was able to tap into those resources that I have. And I can truly say that if I look at all the experiences that I've had, all the pressures that I've had, I really have to thank coaching to help me to go through, and to go through. And it's not necessarily that it has been an easy journey. There were some walls where I had to hit a wall, where I had to sit with uncomfortable situation. But it was a coach who helped me to realize that that uncomfortable solution it's actually a learning space. That's actually where growth and learning happens. So pick what you can pick from that part that is uncomfortable for you, and learn what you can learn to move forward. So all of these experiences and these journey that I've had with my coaches was instrumental in helping me as an executive HR. I mean, as you know, as we are an exec, if you were an executive in HR in an organization, one of the thing is you really are a coach. You become a coach by default,
Yes.
because you really are the person that provides that supports the CEO to provide a clear direction. You are the change champion of the organization, however big the organization is. And by default, naturally, you take those experiences that you had as a coach, where you have been coached, you take that into your working environment. And that's when I realized that, if I take all the experiences that I've had in my working life and translate that into really how I can train to be a coach, to be able to impact much more broader than just this organization that I'm in. And that became my why, really. That became my, when I live here, this is really what I want to do. I want to really be able to impact, use my experiences to impact especially the broader HR community, or even business leaders, into tapping into their own resources, because everybody has got an internal resource to tap into. You just need somebody to direct you into that. And really, that's how I got into coaching, and it's through that experience of having been coached before. And that's why, if I ever get a chance, I always encourage young people, or whoever I meet, to actually have a coach. Get a coach, get somebody that will actually help you with a transition of any kind of transition you do in your life. And through that experience, because you need to experience being coached to be able to get into the other side. So that really has been my journey, Sam, to be able to get to where I am, to say I really would like to coach, as it were.
And you supporting the notion that says that it is not a weakness to have a coach. It is actually a progressiveness, it's a progressive practice to do.
Actually, it's actually a strength to have a coach, not a weakness at all. It's a strength, because I mean, if you go back to all of these adage that are being talked about there, where it says, four eyes are better than two, four ears are better than 2 ears. I mean, it takes a village to raise a child. You cannot do anything by yourself. You need other people to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. So I mean, if you even take it to the very basic level of, where you if you are in a senior role or an executive role. I remember being trained at one of these executive programs. I think it was an NCA or whatever. And when you leave the last week of that organization, they actually go through a process of building a board. They call it a board panel. So what they actually advise is, before you leave, you need to be able to tap into your network, and actually identify 4 or 5 people that are going to be in your board panel. And these are the people that you should be able to tap on if you need a particular kind of issue, or if you even just need somebody to listen, or if you just need an ear, or if you just need to bounce off your idea, because that's how you actually going to propel forward. So I mean, to have a board panel, or to have, when you're in an executive position, or even any position for that matter, you don't have to have 4 people, but have 2 people, or have one person. And if you call that person a coach, even all the better. So, I am a proponent of, having a coach in your life.
And if coaching is so important for managers and leaders, but why aren't all managers and leaders having coaches?
Why aren't they having coaches, you said?
Yes. Why are they not looking for? Why are they not appointing coaches?
Yeah. Sam, I haven't done this research. However, I know that I've read somewhere that, if you look at the history of coaching,
Mm.
It does still have got a way to go. It's got we are caught up now by the disruptors that we have now of technology. But really, if you look at the history of coaching, when I mean about 10 years ago, if you had to talk about a coach, it will be just for the senior executive coaches. So it was associated with elitism. So the organization will only pay for those that are at a senior position or even executives, right? And
Mm.
that evolved. It evolved in the sense that when organization operating model begin to take different shapes, organizations realize that actually the middle manager in the middle is one of the key person that can actually break or make the organization, because that's really where a number of head ratio of people happen. So you've got one managers having 50 people reporting to them, you know,
Mm.
and if that manager does not have a coach, the impact that manager can make to these people that report to them can be dire. It could either be positive or negative. So if we
Mm.
don't support that kind of manager with a coach, and that's where we saw a bigger move, where we saw now that it's not associated with this elitism. Now broader manager pool is being invited into having coaches. And then we had more. Now we had corona. Now with corona, we saw the statistics around how working differently affected quite a lot of human beings. It affected human beings. It did not just affect organizations. It affected everybody, all human beings. I mean, in our home situation, we had to be and sit with each other for 24 hours a day for all the 4 months that the lockdown was in, right?
Mm.
So that brought in a certain dynamic in organizations. People now had to work from home. They've never had to do that before. That
Mm.
brought in another dimension. People that are introverts, um, apparently during the lockdown and the corona stage, apparently they actually did well. Those that are extroverts struggled because they needed to come to the office, they needed to talk to people, they needed to be engaged all the time. And that's where we found quite a number of the wellness statistics going down during that lockdown, because there was quite a lot of demotivation in people who were working wherever they're working, whether it's a hybrid model or whether they work at home or in the office. We saw quite a lot of high levels of stress that were reported because of just how the pandemic has impacted people, and different people for that matter. So be that as it may, with those kind of dynamics, that's where the coach came into play, whether it was a wellness coach or a career coach or a coach to deal with whatever you're dealing with. We saw now that the evolution now going into, it's no longer an elitist concept to have a coach. Everybody actually needs a coach. I mean, you look at sports, you look at tennis, you look at soccer right now that's playing in the World Cup. The coaches are the ones that are really making things happen. So the coaching environment has really evolved to just being for those chosen few, to now being a phenomenon that everybody requires. And now we've got digitization that's at play. We have got coaching that actually now happens online, digitally. You can have a coach where you live in South Africa and your coach is in Japan. You've actually never met face to face, but the
Yeah.
person coaches you. So,
Yeah.
with this evolution and the history of how we define coaching, how coaching actually lends into people's lives, and the differences it makes, the transformation that it makes into people's lives. That's actually what speaks for it. I mean, we are at a point now where it seems like it's become such a phenomenon now that everybody now becomes a coach. So we kind of need to look at we're at a point where it's now looking at who is a good coach, who's a bad coach, who is a coach that's accredited, who's not a coach that's accredited. Now, from moving to 10 years ago where coaching was that to what it is today, I think it has evolved, and I think it is still gonna evolve into greater things.
Or which coach is developing himself or self, and which coach
Abs-
is not developing themselves
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
becoming irrelevant. So I am taking this delay purposefully before we go into your topic, because these are going to be linking into the topic you are going to address. So I haven't forgotten about the topic. I just want us to lay this ground that you are on now, and prepare ourselves for specifics of your topic, which is performance coaching and feedback in the workplace. Because if it's so important, therefore it has to impact the workplace. But let me acknowledge fellow coaches online, Coach Chuma, Coach Tosi, Coach Sedi. Welcome, and as always, we're looking forward to your contribution. Um, Dolores, is there enough conversation between those who buy coaching services and those who consume the coaching services, and those who benefit from the coaching services? In simple terms, the three parties that are common in the workplace. Is there enough conversation about that? Now, I'm not talking about coaching. I'm talking to you now from a point of view, or your perspective of being somebody that has been involved in the executive management and leadership of people in companies. Is there enough conversation about topic coaching as an intervention among these key critical partners? Line manager, the sponsor line manager, and the HR coordinator, and the beneficiary, or the coachee, the client. Is there enough conversation around it, or what do you think?
Yeah. Um, and Sam, I'm gonna give you my experience, just based on my experience having been in these environments. I think the the question probably is there not enough conversation, but the question is the conversation quality conversation? Because I believe that the conversation is there. Because as a typical organization, what will happen is the HR coordinator will obviously, as they lead the strategy of the organization, they will then realize that for us to be able to develop our managers or our line managers, we have a deficit in these particular key skills or competencies or behaviors. And with that gap, we probably need to do, and that gap would have probably been found through a 360 or whatever format of assessment that would have been done. And then what would come as a coaching program to respond to the gap is the HR person with the coach will then sit and talk about, okay, let's talk about a coaching program that should assist in this organization. Now, therein lies the problem. One key issue that you will find is that the coach then has to step into the place of one, understanding the nuances of the organization, or understanding the problem of the organization so well that whatever program and I'm just using he as a metaphor, that whatever program that he proposes would have to be able to support these line managers in such a way that they address both the organization deficit or the gaps that the organization see at the gap, as well as the individual gaps that the line manager himself sees of himself. Now, these two angles, sometimes they fight against each other because the organization has not accepted the fact that the individual might have areas to work on. They see the coaching as, if the gap is about the competency of decision making, you know this line manager should and must be able to be a decision maker, be decisive about what the job requires, without looking first at, does the person have even the capability to do that, or does the person even want to be in that kind of role? And coaching would be able to assist and help that. So the conversation between the three parties for me is really around finding those key nuggets, that formulates, that closes those gaps between the three parties. And then on top of that, you've got an issue around the confidentiality as well. Because now, as a coach, I come in, I coach this line manager, and it becomes critical to be able to make sure that whatever I report on the report to the sponsor is in such a way that it does not break the line manager, the person that's being coached. And that is really also a fine line, because I've experienced that has actually been quite broken a little bit, because what you find that you end up having this what I call triangulation, where you find that between the coach and the sponsor and the coachee, there isn't kind of, there's a meeting of minds probably at the beginning of the conversation, but once the coaching has happened and now it's report back time, that something doesn't work around those three. And that's what I find as a key issue for me. So those two key issues, the fact that the confidentiality we need a lot of conversation around the confidentiality element, so that we understand what becomes confidential, what doesn't become confidential, what gets to the sponsor ears, what doesn't get to the sponsor ears. And so that the manager, or the line manager, the coachee, the person who's been coached, feels comfortable to be able to get into this relationship without thinking that I'm actually going to be found out, or whatever I'm going to be saying will be reported back verbatim, or whatever the case might be. So for me, the conversation is around those, really clarifying the confidentiality, and making sure that the coaching program speaks directly to what the organization needs and how the organization will benefit. So the ROI of the coaching program that the coach brings into the organization. Those, for me, I see those two areas as the areas where the conversation needs to happen between the three parties.
Beautiful. We are talking to Coach Dolores Mashishi. She's joining us in from Switzerland, so but is a South African, and she's wrapping up our series on coaching models and methods. As you move into your topic, or moving on with your topic, if you can also just define for us the two weights performance talking about, it will be wonderful. And while you are then taking over, I want to welcome coaches George, and our entrepreneur DJ Maynard. Can you hear me, Dolores? Hello. It looks like I've lost Coach Dolores. I'm sure she will log in again. Welcome to our series, coaches. You're welcome to uh, make some comments based on what you have heard so far, while we are waiting for Coach Dolores to log in again. I've just lost her, but I'm sure she will come back. Yeah, this is the last session of the year. I've just indicated that we will be wrapping up and closing. So we look forward to a long break before we reconnect in 2023.
I'm back, sir.
Coach Dolores, are you back?
I am back. I don't know what happened. You faded and then it just switched off, but I'm back.
Yeah, it's raining here in Johannesburg, and there's lightning.
Oh
So
dear.
it might be some interferences with the network. I was just saying that as you take over and take us through the topic, explain the context to re-performance and workplace, because sometimes we make assumption that everybody that is listening to us understand where we're coming from when we talk about performance coaching, and what when we talk about workplace, what we mean. I mean, today people work from everywhere, so I don't know whether the word workplace still applies, but over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. I suppose, you know, the definition of performance is there's a free definition, and there really is a definition of how the organization has structured or defined it. But really, the performance in an organization is really the act of performing or executing or accomplishing work or acts or a particular action or a deed, or is an action or proceeding in terms of what you're required to do or what have you been given to do to perform. So in an organization usually has got a strategy, and from that strategy, there's quite a number of processes that an organization go through to crystallize those big objectives, strategic objectives, into individual objectives. And those individual objectives finally are translated into deliverables or KPI, depending on the language that the organization use. So usually when an employee comes into an organization or is contracted into an organization, that's usually one of the first thing. Over and above the induction and all of the things that you go through, you will be given a document that says this is a document of the strategy of the organization, and this is what is expected of you to deliver or to perform, usually within a particular time frame. So that
I like that. I like that, Coach Dolores. So you are saying that there can never be an issue of performance if there has not been agreement from the beginning as to what it is that we are expected to do. Am I right?
absolutely, absolutely. Otherwise, you get that whole process of where people complain about you're moving the goalpost or the target is changing all the time, or and that will definitely make the process of performance discussion or performance conversation very difficult, because it starts and begin from a process of not having clarity, not one party having clarity about what it is that they need to do.
Mm.
So it is very critical that, as you know, when you enter an organization, there is that element of being clear about what it is that you are expected to perform. And it comes in different shapes and sizes in terms of the language, the taxonomy that the organization uses. Some organization would say we always have performance discussion or performance management process or performance, what do they call it? A performance management process, performance discussion.
Appraisals.
Their performance appraisal, that's the one. So depending on what the taxonomy is that the organization use, what's more important as a manager and really for HR is to be able to make sure that that definition is understood by everybody, so you don't have different kind of understanding. And once you've had, I'll talk about feedback later on. So once you have a fully understood language of performance, I always like to look at, when I consult with organization, I look at performance conversation and performance discussion by putting together a frame, because as coaches we always are in some kind of a stage, of a frame. We take a position of what this organization is about, what the organization wants to achieve, and within that context you frame the discussion and you frame the consultation or the conversation on performance that you want to have. Now, if I spoke about how performance has moved from what it was, let's talk about before COVID and post COVID. I like to use before pandemic and post pandemic because of really pandemic, the pandemic really having been the disruptor that came to shake us all. But if you look at performance in organizations before COVID, what usually happened was there was a huge focus on the performance management system. So what you will find is that when a focus is brought into performance, they would look at what system do you use? That will usually be the first question they ask. What system do you use to be able to capture all of these KPIs and all of these measurements that we have and all of these ratings that we have? That will actually be the system, will be the real focus. Over
Yeah.
and above the system, there will also be a focus on the methods or frameworks. For instance, there will be a balance scorecard as one of the key that probably most of us here have had the pleasure of having been exposed to the balance scorecard, and
Yeah.
the other frame that you will find is that there would be a linking of performance to salary increases or performance to the salary process. And those three methods have actually been those, the framework, the methods, the performance systems, whichever it may be. It might not be Oracle, it might be something else. But those thoughts and those thinking have been what HR people have struggled with for as long as I can remember, what managers have struggled with for as long as I can remember. And that is because performance was always being measured by the input. So performance has always been measured by what you bring, what you put on the table,
Yeah.
the effort you put into a task, you know? And
Mm.
and it had to take COVID to help us realize that it's actually not what you put, it's what comes out.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's not the input, but it's the outcome that
Mm.
comes in. So usually when I consult with organizations around thinking about a performance conversation, I focus into outcomes. And when I focus into outcomes because I look at how the world has changed. Look at how organization has changed. Look at how people have changed. Look at how, digitization has come and corrupted the way, or disrupted, not corrupted, disrupted the way we do things. People work from home, as I said, people are in hybrid model. So for the manager to keep on managing where the person is, has the person clocked in the hours? Has the person been able to put in 16 reports that they required to put in? There is actually a school of thought that's beginning to say the shift needs to move from an input to an output.
Hence, I wanted you to also look into the current meaning of workplace,
Yes,
because we were expected in the past to perform at a particular place. And if you do very well, but you don't show up, that
yeah,
becomes an issue.
absolutely. No, absolutely. If you do well, you don't show up, and I mean, and that also takes us back, Sam, to the definition of what is if we do well. What has been defined as if you do well, you know?
Yeah.
Is it those ratios that have been computed into the system to say X is Y? And unless there's a conversation around that, you might find that it's just the system that is giving a false definition of what is doing well.
Are
And
you challenging your clients the clients as you coach them around performance? in terms of what has shifted in their space, or is it still work to be done in your view? And I'm saying you as a
Yeah.
representative of all of us coaches.
So I'm not just challenging, but I'm challenging, but I'm also, what's the word?
Facility.
Gently facilitating a move towards, and what I use, which I would really like to share with you, is I use the SCARF model, which really is based on a neuroscience of leadership. And it begins to, it's a brain-based model started by David Rock somewhere in 2018. And this model really begins to talk about how the brain helps to, the function of the brain is to minimize threats and maximize rewards. So it basically talks about the element of survival and threat, pain and reward, and how are those being regulated in the brain. And if we understand that, it is going to be so easy for managers to be able to apply the model to the domain of the the domain, to link to the behavior and performance of human beings, and that will become so much easier. So as a coach, I think it's important to be able to facilitate that move from where performance is, or how performance used to be, move it gently into how, and showing how it actually can work. And if I have to go into the scarf model, the scarf model is really spelled scarf as in the scarf that we wear on our necks.
Yeah.
And the stands for status. The C stands for certainty, the A stands for autonomy, the R stands for relatedness, and the FAIR stands for fairness. The F stands
Mm,
for fairness, And
mm,
and 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 these five entities really speaks to the sense of how a person can feel,
mm,
how a person can feel, and how it's going to be able to push on to the behavior that we actually would like to have. So if a person feels a sense of personal worth, that's status. If they're
mm.
sitting around the table and there's a sense of worth in terms of what they do, there is definitely going to be the part in the brain that's going to be influenced.
Oh no, man, we lost Dolores again at the point when really she was hitting it. Yeah, wow. I'm profusely taking notes here, colleagues, as I'm learning this new model that Dolores is sharing with us. It's in addition to our existing models, but yeah, she will come back. I know she will dial back. I'm just checking. I think I've seen some few comments. Somebody liked the conversation. That was Coach Seri saying that confidentiality must be upheld, otherwise it becomes unethical. And of course, it shuts people off when they are not guaranteed of confidentiality. That's fundamental. I see Dolores is back. Yeah, I was just saying that you dropped off at the time when I was really getting very excited, profusely taking notes about this model scarf. And I like the point you were hammering about feeling personal worth.
Yes.
That is so true. Let me hand it over back over to you to continue. You were explaining the S of the scarf.
Correct, yes. So when the employee, I'm going to call them the employee in this case, when the employee is feeling a sense of worth, what happens is, to take away the threat that a performance discussion might bring to them is, for instance, when by giving advice or instructions, offering feedback, performance in a performance reviews, that that threat of coming into a performance discussion or doing a performance review is being, once they feel that sense of status, right? They would actually be able to get a sense of reward by being able to look at, what are the best times in their life where they had to achieve a task, where look at the time where you receive positive feedback. So you use those experiences to stimulate the brain around the fact that you actually can feel a sense of status um, um, in whatever task that you want to do, by tapping in onto some of the lived experiences that they've had before, and to take away the threat. Because remember this model speaks about, survival and threat versus pain and reward. So how the brain regulate those two elements one after the other. Yeah. So the C speaks about certainty, and certainty speaks about a sense of what the future holds. And really, that really speaks to, when you don't know what your boss expectations are, or when your boss is acting incongruent, as an example,
Yeah.
that sparks a level of threat in you, in an individual. That can spark a level of threat, in the sense that when a person has got to come and perform, they are always in a threat model. They feel threatened by being in this particular team, because they never know what actually is expected, what the boss is going to ask for this time, right? But the reward element of that is, when you start stating clear objectives at the start of a discussion, at the start of a job, when you break project down into small steps, as an example, that taps into that experience of reward that actually sparks the certainty around what a person can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these two elements.
Mm. Mm.
and and
And
we,
so that certainty is the opposite of fear, or not being
right,
sure whether
yes,
you are ready or capable to meet what is expected of you.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That's it. It's certainty. It gives you a sense of it, and it gives you a sense of certainty, and it gives that calmness into that part of the brain that will spark that confidence about the fact that I can do this. I've been able to do this before. You actually even go back, because the issue is to be able to help the brain to tap into those past experiences where you actually were able to do this,
Mm.
and magnify that, right?
Mm.
So the A that speaks to the autonomy really speaks about a sense of being in control, a sense of control over your life, you know.
Mm.
And really, when you come to performance management, you see this a lot in people feeling micromanaged.
Yeah.
When you are micromanaged, you really don't feel a sense of being able to do things, because you actually feel like you're being second guessed every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
No? And that can spark a threat in terms of your behavior, in terms of what you need to do. However, the reward side of it is a manager who allows people to organize their workflow, to organize their working hours, to organize themselves, and actually, in this hybrid work, in the working from home, Deloitte's article, that's really where they found the employee value proposition in organization to be. They say that organizations that are allowing individuals to actually organize their work, choose who they want to work with in terms of teams, you get more out of those teams than the micromanaging element that used to happen in the past. So that's the reward element of the autonomy, right?
Mm.
And the R that stands for relatedness referred to a sense of safety with others.
Mm.
And that I can't even stress enough, because when safety does not even happen when you start speaking about performance management. I mean, a sense of safety is in all elements of work and of life. If somebody does not feel safe, you really spark quite a number of reaction, not just in your brain but in your body and in your sense of psyche. And you know you usually see this when you're meeting somebody from a different culture, and you are not feeling confident about that, or when you're meeting somebody unknown. Yeah.
Mm.
But the reward of it is, and funny enough, the example they use about that reward is that usually when you set up mentoring or coaching systems at work, so if you have a coach, if you have a culture of coaching and a culture of mentoring at work, you've got these buddy systems, you've got this. I remember in one organization, a private equity firm that I used to work with, every time when they've done a deal, they usually have post deal discussion. And that's where they come back and they actually talk about what actually went well, what didn't we do, could we have done better. And that created a culture of sharing, a culture of tapping on each other. Because now we know that this one is great with this. If we want this, we go to this one. So it creates that coaching system or a mentoring system in work that helps in terms of whether you come in to discuss a team performance. A team performance does not become what we have come to experience today, where it depends on who actually is being liked in the team. That actually becomes one that is being being rated high, and the others is those kind of dynamics. When there's a sense of relatedness in teams and in groups
Yeah.
of people, that becomes the key to making sure that the performance in an organization goes at an all-time high. And the last F, which stands for fairness, that speaks to sense of fairness, as it says. And
Yeah.
really this speaks to when there are lack of ground rules, when there are lack of ground rules, when the expectations or objections are not clear, you know,
Mm.
and when there isn't transparency in terms of what is supposed to be done, or what is the vision of the leader. If the vision is not shared, it's not transparent, and different rules for different people, that can create quite a lot of threat within a team or in an individual for that matter. you know and what is then speaking about in terms of the reward is around working on the transparency, how an organization builds transparency, or sometimes in even doing quite a number of they talk about a number of volunteer work, and that's really around opening you as a leader, opening yourself up, and not just necessarily being an open book, but being an open book that people can trust and follow, and
Yeah.
people can see that you actually don't treat people differently. You treat people in an equal manner, or equal manner, right?
Mm.
So
Wow. And I can imagine that fairness is relative and it's specific to what is being contracted with, either as individuals or teams. But the key thing then is that being transparent to everybody, right?
absolutely, absolutely. Because remember, it also spoke about that there has to be, ground rules. So if there are ground rules, If there are ground rules, and um, if there are rules that you guys have contracted on and you have accepted on it, all of you have accepted on these rules and you've contracted on them, that becomes what's binding and what drives what our conversation is going to be about, and drives what you're going to measure us on, so that it doesn't change when something happens, and then I can, I find myself being in a position where I can't even rely on what I've done, because now the goalposts have changed and these rules have changed, and the rules that I thought I'm working on are not the rules anymore. It really can put people in a very dire situation in terms of how they have to have a conversation in terms of their performance. Yeah. And we contract on SMART goals as well, and SMART goals are specific, they're measurables, they're achievables, they're relevant, they're time based. And if you change in the middle of the road and you don't inform everybody that we now are changing and this now becomes the new game, it becomes unfair.
Yeah.
It becomes unfair.
So as the changes in the world of work change the way we facilitate performance coaching, like the changes that were brought by forward as a result of COVID-19, people having to work from home, and workplace no longer being physical space but
Yeah.
virtual space too. Has
Yeah.
that, in your view, or must that actually inform the way we have been, the way we conduct offer performance coaching? Because it's very easy many a times to find yourself coaching on performance, even if it's not a referral coaching. The client can easily say, I'm battling with managing performance for myself or for my team, and I would like that to be a theme.
So the quickest answer that I'm going to give you, but I'm going to explain, the quickest answer is that the jury is still out, because we're only 2 years out of the pandemic,
Yes.
and we're seeing quite a number of organizations that I refer to as having matured cultures. I
Yes.
see them as being a little bit progressive in terms of, firstly, they use data that is right now. They don't use old data.
Mm.
So you find organizations like, and I'm not punting for them, organizations like Microsoft,
Yeah.
organizations like Discovery,
Mm.
you, especially if it's organization that now are using cloud-based kind of software, they always check on people. So every Friday you find organization having like a instead of that 90-page survey that they send at the end of the year, what they do is every month there's a quick, what they call a quick 2-minute survey, which checks on people.
Mm.
It's sent out to everybody. How was your week? Have you achieved your weekly objectives? If so,
So
why?
we could plug in coaching sessions into that data, where it reports that so many people had sessions this week.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Actually, we should, not we could, we should, because when the data pulls out, and the data pulls out that in this month, if we know that we have about 600 people that are on coaching contracts, if we get a number that is less, we already have an issue to follow up, to find out why.
Mm.
Why are
Mm.
people not getting on coaching? Is it about people not understanding the value, or is it about the coach not showing up, or is it about people not understanding what the coach is supposed to be doing? So it begins to open up all sorts of conversations that we as coaches should also be aware of, in terms of where we sit. We actually think people understand what coaching is about, and you would be surprised that, you know, sometimes people think coaching is coming to give them advice. It's an advisory consulting firm, and it's not that.
I'm taking note of the comments in the chat box. Colleagues are following and they are commenting. I'm sure you can see some of them. And Sida Mulema is affirming you. And then I think there is a point from Coach Tuma saying, how do you deal with a boss who is insecure that makes his subordinates to even lessen work quality, accommodating his insecure boss? They are insecure boss. Okay, so it's like people purposefully underperform not to threaten their bosses. I guess that's yeah, that is
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
those companies that have no mature culture. But your view, your response to that?
Yeah. Look, Coach Chuma, I think my issue there would be the let's go to the real problem, and deal with the real problem. And really, the problem here would be to deal with the boss's insecurity, to help the boss, coach the
Yes.
boss through his own insecurity.
Yes. And this is very common, Coach Dolores.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, sometimes they don't even lessen the work. Sometimes they do all sorts of weird things. But for me, I would go back to coaching the individual concerned. More importantly, I would even go further and look at what actually is the leadership understanding. What is the leadership culture of this organization? Because it might be a bigger cancer than just this poor boss who is feeling insecure and acting insecure. Because what the boss is doing is really acting out his own insecurities. And if the organization is not having a culture of supporting or training or coaching, that's really where the bigger problem is. So I will start with the boss, and I will go to further to look at what is there in the culture of the organization that supports
Mm.
confidence in managers to be able to perform their jobs.
Coach Dolores, and this is my view, and let me know what your thinking is. We have always said that one of the fundamentals of coaching is that it is not an event.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It takes a while, and that must be understood. Therefore, sometimes instead of achieving your outcomes, you will achieve milestones in between. So, I'm of the view that if you are coaching in a company that has actually never experienced coaching and you are coaching for the first time, and the management often doesn't start with themselves, they'll start with the staff or some few staff. And therefore, if then you experience what Coach Chuma is mentioning, whereby now all of a sudden these employees are starting to shine, and their bosses are starting to become jealous because they never knew what this is going to unlock, you still have achieved something, because in terms of the conscious competency model, that means that coach, that boss is moving away from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. It's just now acting it out because it's painful, but I
Yes.
think you have achieved something. What do you think? Not ultimate, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately,
Yeah. Yeah.
you want a situation where a boss is supportive. But this is a new company that has just introduced coaching, and now the awareness is very painful. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope they are not going to fire you, Dolores, as a coach and stop the whole thing. That's what you must try and motivate. But if it's just them really feeling the pain and but they are not going to plug off, then I think my view is that trust the process that somewhere down the line you'll crack it, or the wrong manager will leave.
That is why and I agree with you, Sam, and that is why I always am of the view that when you're given one manager in an organization and say, okay, please coach this manager, right? I think it's important that as coaches, I look at the broader organism. you know I look at the broader organism, and the word organism comes from the word organization. It shares the Latin words. It's from a Latin root, organism and organization. And when you go into the broader organization, you look at what is going to support not just this individual, but this individual that you're coaching and all other individuals that are impacting his or her life. So that is this person's boss, this person's direct reports, this person's stakeholder, this person teams, the team that the person works with. So you as a coach, you basically need to work with an organism like an amoeba, because you are going to affect, or this person is going to affect others by the way that they move from unconscious to the conscious. They're going to affect others in the way that they're going to behave and act. They're going to act probably in a much more positive way, because now they've kind of, in brackets, seen the light. And it has to happen in such a way that it affects others in such a way that others also want to be able to do the same.
Mm.
So
You
I
know,
would look at the whole organization.
just to support you on this point, um, I experienced from with a couple of clients where the shift becomes so evident so quick
Mm,
that 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 actually the manager says, Sam, this is unbelievable how, and it's not even about achieving the goals that they've set themselves for coaching, but
yeah,
it's just they're saying that the energy
yeah,
is positive, the enthusiasm, the group, the member group that we are coaching, the
yeah,
members of the group we are coaching, how much they look forward to meet their coach. And
yeah.
then they start saying, but sure, could this, when a child unpack a sweet and realize that this thing is nice, and then they start wanting more of it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then what more then after a year of, so sometimes it's really a question of, and I'm sorry to belabor this point, because I really want us to understand what
Mm.
performance coaching is also about, the emotions and the energy that you bring out. So will you agree with me when I say that as a coach, you have much more responsibility than just a contract? I mean, if you find out that the manager, a particular manager, is very intimidated by the outcome of such a strategic intervention like coaching, wouldn't it be a great moment and a great opportunity for you, in a more diplomatic way, for you to bring this to the attention of whoever is the ultimate in the organization, to say, listen, this is human nature, but please watch it. Manager might respond to it in a way that is self-defeating, because you are paying me money for this. That manager needs help, perhaps.
Hey, Sam, it's one of the, that's what I call demonstrating how coaching works, because the person, the line manager you're coaching, if they, because the coach has got a, as you say, the coach has got a very, it's not, yeah, I don't want to say a difficult job, but a task really of tapping into this individual in such a way that they see the potential in them, they challenge the potential in them, and they're able to push forward to be able to confront all of this that they are going through, to get on the other side. And once they get on the other side, yes, they are going to be an example. They're going to be a shining example. And you're right, it actually happens quite quickly. And maybe to deviate a little bit, I'm going to give you an example about my personal coach. So when I was working in my 9 to 5 corporate job, one of the things that my coach did was, when I was running a meeting, she came to sit in my meeting, in my exco meeting. She came to sit in my exco meeting because we are working on how I come across some of the certain language that I use, some of the things that I use. And she just sat there at the end. I introduced her as my coach. So my direct reports knew I had a coach. So they didn't see having a coach as something to shy away from, because I was very open about it and I was transparent about it. And I was transparent about, the things that I'm working on. And my coach will sit in there and we will go on with our morning exco session. And thereafter, she will come and give me feedback. And the next session, I will actually have to practice the feedback that she's told me. And Lord behold, my direct reports will actually give me a different feedback. Like, hey, we like the way you ask these questions. We like the way you come across. We like the way that you're giving us space to be able to do ABC. So for me, it's a coaching that is demonstrated, where when the transformation happens, it's visible, and it actually can be spread out into, because my boss at the time ultimately got to hear about all the good things that are happening in exco meetings. And what he did is, the boss said, okay, I think coaches must come and actually sit in all the exco meetings and actually support and help other executives in terms of how they run meetings. So I agree with you that, my own experience in terms of how, coaching can actually be visible and actually be elevated to the bigger bosses, to the bigger bosses, to say that this is what the change we're seeing. And it was through that change that coaching was introduced in the broader organization, to say, if it can happen here, let's see how we replicate the story.
So basically, you are saying that as a coach, you don't stop selling the value proposition of coaching while you are busy coaching inside the organization.
I'm not sure about my fellow coaches, but what I've realized is that, you come in, you're being given this brief as a problem, and once you go in there, you see so many dynamics that, this amoeba has moved so much that it's not just this one thing. It's not an event, as we say. This is really going to be a programmatic, systematic shift that needs to happen in the organization. And that's what I found all the time, that it's not going to be about coaching that particular executive. You're going to find that it's there are also people behavior issues that are going to be on the fold, because people behave according to how they feel and according to the environment that they put in, according to the culture that they're immersed in. So people will behave according to that. If people are not behaving accordingly, go and look at the culture, go and look at the environment which they are. Something in there is amiss, you will find. And that's
Wow.
basically how I found it. Yeah.
Coach Dolores, will you want to go on to the topic of feedback
Yes.
within the context of performance coaching?
Correct. Yes. So feedback. When I was preparing for this conversation of feedback, I was laughing because I remember at some point in my life, I used to say, why do we call it feedback? Why don't we call it feed forward? Because, and I'll tell you why. And it's still a position of mine, because the word feedback just brings terror, not just to managers, but to individuals who are going to develop, or who are going to be able to be given this feedback, because they never know what feedback are they going to get. And if you think back at a typical feedback conversation or a typical feedback environment, Usually what is being used is, you will find that there are these feedback mechanisms that are used for performance. There's usually a 360, which I assume all of us, we've kind of heard about or have come into contact with in our lives. There's also this methodology of start, stop, continue. There is that process where we were trained. I don't know, Sam, about you, but we were trained that when you give feedback, start first with the good three good things, and then come on with all the bad things. That whole conversation that we were
Mm.
trained how to do.
Yeah.
And all these methods, unfortunately, they are dreaded on by managers and employees alike. And sometimes what you'll find is that you will find that the organization will immediately jump into, the HR would say, okay, let's go and train on performance management, on how to improve behaviors. And what I found is there's a growing body of knowledge that dispel these methodologies. And they speaks about organizations that heed for the culture of asking for feedback instead of giving feedback.
Mm.
So because and it went on to looking at, the neurosemantic of what happens when you say to a person, we're having a performance feedback conversation. Yeah. Immediately
Mm.
when you say that, people immediately get into a flight or fright. Yeah.
Yeah.
Immediately people view this as so miserable because, when the neuroscientists scan the brain scan of people who are exposed to a social threat and they see performance feedback as a social threat, yeah, the result is that the images that they saw on the brain scan, it shows images of people scans that are exposed to physical threats, like when you actually have had a sprain on your ankle, or when your body, when you had face flashes, or your heart race. So your body responds to that kind of social threat when people are told you're going to a performance feedback session. I mean, that's really
Mm.
how profound the feedback conversation is.
So the purpose of feedback is to make people aware of areas that they haven't done very well or areas where they've done very well. So so that will then suggest that it can't be the only methodology that is used to make people aware of their areas of improvement. What will be the other replacements of feedback?
I always talk about, I've always talked about, getting to a culture of feedback, you know. So when an organization has a culture of feedback, what you find is that feedback becomes a typical conversation methodology that happens all the time, if not most of the time. It
Mm.
does not just happen at a performance management or a performance appraisal stage. So that
Mm.
is key number one. And once the culture of feedback is entrenched or is part of the organization, people will actually ask for feedback instead of waiting to be given feedback. So I would do, as an example, I would do a project, and at the end of the project, once I've presented it, I will go around and ask for feedback on that particular project.
Mm.
Because in that way, it's frequent feedback. So you get frequent feedback, you make feedback a habit, you know, and you can correct more quickly
Mm.
what you can correct. And it also changes the whole state of feedback, because you don't see feedback now as, okay, this thing that has to happen because I have to be told what I'm doing wrong. because you also can be told what you're doing right, and to even more how you can do that right that you've been. So it goes into the it goes into the psyche, the kind of questions that are being asked, the kind of and the key is to start small. The key is to start small. It's like going on a diet. You don't want to you cut out you don't want to cut out everything that is delicious out of your life tomorrow because you are going on a diet. You gradually replace healthy habits. The same goes with feedback. You start by starting small with, tune in, and ask your observers, what can I do right? What more can we do right as an organization? What can I do right as an individual, especially on specific tasks that you're doing? Because in that way, an individual will really experience fewer perceived threats and much more stronger learning, because feedback is also about learning.
Mm.
Once you get feedback on this, you've done well, this maybe it needs a little bit more work, or it could even be something as to say, this needs a little bit more work. Just that, instead of you didn't do this right.
Mm. There's a comment here. I don't know whether you have seen it. I just want to make sure that we don't proceed without actually responding to it. I think it came from Coach Tosi. Just to acknowledge it, and you tell me if you want to respond to it. Sorry for
Okay.
that. Says to the comment about coaching for line managers, I will say some companies there have since been allocating coaches to the managers, but it was done in a way that is subtle, in a subtle manner, and assigned to the HR specialist without any formal contract entered into by both parties. As an HR specialist, you find yourself having additional tasks of facilitating the transformation in those managers over a certain period with scheduled meetings. I'm sure you can read it there. I think I just
I
wanted
can
to
read it.
capture it.
Yes, I can read it. I can see it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Coach Tosi. Very subtle manner assigned to the HR. Yeah. Oh, Coach Tosi. Yeah, welcome to the world of HR people. Yes, this happens, and this happens when you find an HR specialist that um, sometimes it's just about experience, you know, and I suppose as coaches, you know, I find myself as a coach having to support that HR person as well, uh, to support the HR person by kind of advising him in terms of what is the best way to do this. How do you enter into a contract? How do you put contracts together? Because sometimes you find that you have to coach the ecosystem, not just the person that is in front of you that you need to coach for the work to actually happen. So I hear what you're saying. What you're saying, Coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially I mean, for companies that want to introduce internal coaching program, internal in the sense that it's an intervention that is supporting their overall people development strategy, and coaches come in there not to coach in the empty space, but they're coaching in the context of
Mm,
an internal coaching program, and HR tends to be the owner of that. But
yes.
I don't think HR should always make it their only responsibility. Maybe sometimes we make a mistake by owning things that we shouldn't be owning, but rather facilitating.
Yeah.
But the HR is always expected to assist, and I agree with you that sometimes you can be brought in as a coach to assist in putting together a framework, and that wouldn't be a coaching work, but it will be facilitating or consulting to
Yeah,
deliver a infrastructure or a system that will then enable coaching to take place.
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
because because the coaches are not, I mean, HR people are not necessarily coaches, and so they
Exactly.
might be having generic knowledge of it, but when you go into the nuts and bolts of it in terms of how do you put together a coaching program, how
Yeah,
do you contract, and how do you assign managers, that is really a specialization of coaches.
absolutely. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
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 Hence, I said that sometimes you're going to have to coach the HR person themselves,
Yes.
even though they are the facilitator or the coordinator is the right word. Even though they are
Yeah.
coordinators, you kind of also, especially if you find the HR person is not necessarily more experienced in these program coaching program facilitation that we have.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. I can
So,
see your time flies, it's when you're enjoying yourself. Um, I want to check with you if you have other additional specific, I mean, specific inputs you wanted to make. Otherwise,
yeah.
you have a huge responsibility of summing up for all of us the entire series.
Oh
There's
my
no right or wrong. You have been participating so wonderfully, so I can trust that you at the end you will sum up the entire series for us without remembering everything, of course. So, but unless you have other points to cover.
Yes, just the final point on feedback before we I finish here is that you know we as we have a huge task of demystifying feedback in organizations, um, because in organizations feedback is as I said, the research shows that it's it's a word and it's a process that is being feared upon, and that's because there's a mystery about it, because when you go into this feedback session, you go into this room and it's you and the manager and nobody knows what happens in there, and then you come out and depending on really what happened in there, you are either morosed or you're taken back to something that you didn't do 8 months ago and now you're hearing about it now. So we have a huge job of demystifying feedback and just seeing really as a conversation where two people are giving each other license to be critical of each other.
Mm,
And when you do that under a very great culture that accepts that, you will find that people feel incentivized to actually give honest feedback, but to do so respectfully, you
mm,
know because
mm,
even if the roles are reversed, they will still be able to do that. People will be able to be more sensitive in how they deliver critical feedback, because you know that it's also going to happen to you at some stage. So for me, that's really the sweet spot that I like to leave you with, that you know demystifying feedback and getting into the habit of asking for feedback, not just waiting to receive feedback from the boss, is for me the key critical step that we can go to.
mm.
Yes.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much. You have raised some fundamental issues that we may want to follow through in the coming year, because this is it. I mean, at the end of the day, if our coaching interventions are not improving performance of people and organizations at the workplace, then we have no reason to exist. Of course, there is coaching outside the workplace. That's definitely the case. But in this case, we're looking at major clients of ours as coaches are employing organizations. And for as long as they can justify spending money, investing money in their people to undergo coaching, then we have a role to play.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Dolores, you have been part of the series. It's like that the last leg of Formula One. We look back to say, my goodness, where did it start? At what point did Verstappen won this series? Now we are just wrapping up. So if you look back,
Yes.
on behalf of our coaching community, what have we brought up to the surface? I don't think we will have answered everything, but what do you think we have brought up to the surface that we may want to look at in the coming year when we're going to have a weekly coaches get together to really focus on the process of really being a coach in front of clients. In other words, give ourselves capacity, and then once a month we will have the business of coaching. So I want you, without no right or wrong, what will you think are the things? What will you say are the things that we really brought to the surface through this series, and we may want to look at going forward further into detail?
Sure.
A big ask, I know.
It is a big ask. It is a big ask. So let me first say that when I joined Comesa podcasting broadcast series, for me it was a great eye opener, and it was a great eye opener because it was a platform, or it is a platform, where I was able to meet virtually, at least, with a number of coaches that have coached for a long time. Remember, I haven't been coaching for long. I really
Mm,
have been coaching for like 2 to 3 years.
mm,
So having, sitting at the feet of these experienced coaches, for me, is one of the key benefit that I will always appreciate. Getting to know about these models that we just read about sometimes, but unpacking them and getting deeper into them with examples, with conversations about them, like the growth model, the appreciative model. For me, that is the key of, the University of Coaches for me. So for me, I entered into the University of Coaches, where I'm able to spread my wings in terms of how much I can absorb, and how much as coaches we can share of our different spaces, as different specialities, different areas and methodologies that we really practice on a day-to-day basis. So that was one thing. And that's why I appreciate this platform so much. The other key thing was also around the fact that we were able well, Sam, just kudos to you. You were able to also connect us, or bring other opportunities that we might not necessarily have those opportunities for, like introducing the Coach Hub, and the participating into with the ICF research that they do. So just keeping in contact with even broader coaches that are not necessarily in the diaspora or in our region, but globally, to showcase that really coaching is a global phenomenon. And if we think we have scratched the surface of it, we actually haven't seen anything yet.
mm,
There is so much to still be done. And and I think I was sharing with you, Coach Sam, that when I'm here in Switzerland, what I do is I visit some of the CEOs of these pharmaceutical companies. I just know them because I went to school with them at NCET, so I
yeah,
kept those contacts. So what I do is, when I'm here, I visit Rocher, which is the big pharmaceutical company. The CEO there, I was in a class with. So he basically just introduced me to the HR person, and I get to understand how they do things, how they do coaching.
mm,
know?
mm,
And funny enough, they actually are using Coach Hub. They're using
yeah,
they're using Coach Hub. It's actually all online, Everybody has been given a license to go in and a link, log in and a password. They go in, they look at an array of coaches that the organization has kind of chosen from Coach Hub. They can actually look at the coach that they would want to utilize. They look at, can the coach speak this language or that language? What is this coach's specialization in, and all of that? And they actually can schedule a chemistry session themselves with the coach. So it happens just so seamlessly, online, and it works, and that's one. The other companies where my partner is an executive at, they also use Coach Hub. So and it's an engineering company, it's not actually a pharmaceutical. So the coaching in the global space is growing, and it's there, and really that's the space where I would like to see us growing our tentacles through this platform, more than what we're doing now. But and I know that we do have counterparts, global counterparts in the network. So personally, I would really like to see that angle being grown much more. Um, and I mean, I've been so as I've had my first client through the Cometa entity. So I'm feeling very excited. We're starting. We've done a chemistry session, and the coaching session is starting in December, going through to next year. So I'm quite excited about that as well, and I see there's also quite a space for all of us to actually come together and broaden that space, because I mean sometimes there are clients that I have that really I can coach in their space, and I want to be able to know that I have a list of coaches to tap on to be able to refer such particular clients that I can. So that kind of working together, and I don't like to use the word family, but I think actually we are a coaching family,
Absolutely.
in terms of how we're going to grow the coaching. The one part that I think the jury is still out on that as well is this whole accreditation story, and I think I'm still debating in my head about what I really feel about it. So I'll actually leave it there. But I actually have enjoyed the utilization of this platform, and to being part of this platform, and I see myself growing every day. I mean, I'm not the same kind of coach that I was last year, definitely.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for that testimonial. It's really helpful. And you have touched with your last remarks on the crux of it, which is the business of coaching, and the intention of actually this platform is not just to get together and have fun. One main objective of ours is that there are so many people that professionally actually should be coaches, but technically they are not able to because of the requirements that take a longer for them to arrive at the coaching business, and therefore they may also become discouraged if there's no community where they belong to. And that's why we created the space for people to feel what it is like to be already a coach while you are still looking at the technicalities of certification and accreditation and that. But there is one aspect that we haven't touched on that is going to come out more and more clear next year, and that is actually a sister offering of coaching, which is mentoring. And I've spoken to some of the coaches to say, actually, the quickest way to jump into coaching is to first offer mentoring, because we don't feel good when you are part of this community and you are not able to be deployed to help our clients. Meanwhile, our clients want more than coaching.
Yes.
Uh, and then also, I raised this last time that we are not confused in terms of, or conflicted in terms of saying that our driver is to see coaches collaborating and coaches being deployed at the clients and making money themselves while they are growing. So it's a business initiative, while at the same time it's an initiative to build a community of coaches to grow ourselves together. Lastly, from my side, it is not just about accreditation, Coach Dolores, because accreditation is the last thing. It's about developing ourselves as coaches,
Development.
because
Yes.
it's no use to get accredited and you don't develop yourself, and then you come across clients not really experiencing you because you are not developing yourself. You think having that qualification and certificate is enough, and therefore you don't have to develop yourself. Clients will know that, and they will actually, and many clients already, they insist on seeing two coaches minimum, and then them choosing who they want. And people will pick it up that you are not actually in touch with the trends, and you are not articulate around this topic that you say is your offering. So yeah, thank you so much for touching on that topic. It's a journey, but definitely next year is going to be much more profound in terms of even deploying coaches that can coach under our supervision when we feel that their qualification or accreditation is not yet up to the level. And we will sell that to clients as such. And clients will be okay with that because a number of clients approach us and say, we just want people who are looking for hours. We can't afford this money. But if they can be supported by a professional coach so that we know they do the right thing, then we can get into the relationship.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree. I totally agree.
Beautiful.
Self-development is going to be the key here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Enjoy yourself in Switzerland. I hope you go via FIFA House and check if things are still okay there.
There's gonna be a party in this house because Switzerland was playing against Cameroon and they won this morning. So there's gonna be happiness tonight.
Okay. Wonderful. Beautiful. All the best and travel safe back home
Thank you
whenever
so
you
much.
decide to come back to the South.
Thank you so much. And thank you to fellow coaches who logged in and for your support. And Sam, thank you so much for your support too. And Michael as well. So in the background.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you so much. Listeners, colleagues, thank you so much indeed. This was the last session of the year, and I hope the energy you've gained from this session today sustains you up to, I think we'll be back in February with our coaches learning forum, and we will communicate with you in terms of specifics. But it's been a wonderful year. Please take care of yourself during the festive season and come back fresh. Looking forward to more engaging in 2023. Thank you. Take care. Goodbye.
Take care. Goodbye.
That was our episode at Cometa Radio Worldwide podcast. My name is Sam Zima, your moderator, facilitator, and executive coach. I invite you to subscribe and follow us at comezaradiopodcast.com or any of your favorite podcast platforms and receive notifications when we go live or publish new episodes. To become our member and enjoy the benefits associated with that membership, you may apply online at www.comezaclub.africa. The other services of Comeza may be accessed at www.comeza-goc.com, or you may write to us at callcenter@comeza-goc.com. Call center is spelled CALLCENTRE, and it is call center at comeza-goc.com. You are welcome to give us a call during working hours, Monday to Friday, at telephone number +27 11974 5612. We are available on all social media platforms. Take care, be safe, and goodbye.